Good morning, Ms. Soorholtz, Greer. How are you this morning?
I'm fine.
I'm not used to calling you that.
I know.
We've tried so many cases over the years. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and give your opening remarks.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all of your service here today. I know this is like a daunting task, and I appreciate the effort. But when I was reflecting on this presentation, and it is a reflection because you look back at your life, and it's kind of a wonderful thing to do every now and then to take a look at that. And when I did that, I was thinking about somewhat how I approach my life and when I deal with juries and that sort of thing, when you have to talk to a group of people and convince them about a certain path. And what I know about us in life is that it's like we carry this quilt, and what you have with your quilt is your life experiences, which involves all of these people that you touch or have touched you and formed and helped you become what you are. And you also have your lessons that you've learned. And what we also know about that is those are those lessons that are good, bad, and otherwise, because often you learn more from things that happen badly and figure out how to pick up and rebuild. And you folks are really the example of what I'm talking about, because each of you come from very different backgrounds, have different collective experiences, and yet you're going to make a decision today that will impact Iowans. And, you know, I think that is basically what I'm trying to get to in terms of what I'm hoping that you will look at in terms of my experiences. Because it's very hard to talk about yourself. And I had a sister call last night and say, remember, you do have to talk about yourself tomorrow. But I wanted to point out 3 things that I really thought were important about me that maybe you could take into your deliberations and would ask that you support my moving forward to the governor. First of all, my background is I was a farm kid, kind of that experience that you have where I was lucky enough to see my father, who didn't have a college degree, achieve high marks in his profession, and he taught me a lot about that. And one of the things that I watched and observed about him in that effort was that, and he said to me, Sharon, it's not so much the pedigree that you have, but it's what you do with your life. And if you're a hog farmer's kid, you laugh about the word pedigree, because that was really what I got from him. And so I was able to grow up and have this wonderful experience of hard work, delivered pigs, rode tractors, did all the chores that all the guys that I knew did. And no one ever taught me that I couldn't be in a room of males and not speak. That was not a part of our fabric. And so when you have 4 sisters and you have a farm background, you learn hard work, and I'm appreciative of that. And I've carried that forward in my life. Secondly, I would tell you that I always tell our daughters, I go, you guys have these superpowers. And we always talked about what their superpowers were. And one of the things that I think that I would bring to the court is what I would tell you is my superpower of problem solving. And I've done that in all aspects of my life, from very on when I was in high school, when people would call me mother, to the point of my career and working out solutions on cases with people, trying to figure out what works best for people, what would be the best result for everyone. Those are skills that I think are very helpful on the Court of Appeals when you're dealing with very wide variety of circumstances and situations, and trying to make people feel like while they may not have gotten the result they want particularly, they know that somebody really looked at it and thought about it and provided a solution. And then finally, I would tell you that the other thing that I bring that I wanted to talk about today was my experience and background in a number of different areas of the law, trying to do different things, looking at solutions that are varied, but also touching cases in divorce, criminal law, civil law. Yesterday I looked at a gentleman's contract of employment, helped a company in Marshalltown negotiate their sales agreement with a vendor from out of the state. And it's I've been very blessed to have that sort of background and work experience. But I feel like that would translate very well to the Court of Appeals. And just as you're all different and coming to a solution today, the Court of Appeals is much like that sort of thing, or body, where you would want to have folks from varied backgrounds and interests and experiences on your court to get to that best result. And what's so wonderful about being in a farm family, working in a county seat town, is that you actually see these people, you know how these decisions impact them, and you carry that with you at all time when you're making decisions and actually, trying to craft results in cases. And so with that, I will ask you for your questions.
Thank you. Ms. Pearson?
Thank you for your application, and thank you very much for being with us today. When we spoke and we talked about your background, which you've highlighted here today, you certainly have a very diverse background as well, and you had commented that here in more recent years, you've kind of moved into a consulting role as well, to consult with others. So share with us how that has impacted your practice and how that could be a benefit and add value serving on the appellate court.
Thank you. Well, I've had, after so many years of doing this, you do have people that will call you and say, I have this very difficult case, would you agree to be co-counsel with me? And so I've had that opportunity recently in many situations, and some of these folks know about some of these situations, but it's very flattering, but what's great about that is it allows you to enter a case at a different level, and you start to look at it from 10,000 feet up and analyze it. And we often do that anyway, but when you're really retained to give those extra, extra look at a case, you do that. And I think that's fits very well in what the Court of Appeals does, or what an appellate court does, is to look at all of the facts, the fabric of the case, and make that decision. So I think that helps get me to that role.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowden? Mr. Berger?
No question.
Mr. Diaz?
I want to use your superpower.
Okay.
One of the concerns I have is that we tend to focus greatly on judges as the next sort of a stepping stone. I'm worried about the ability to attract high-quality lawyers, such as yourself, to go from that position rather than go through the district court. Make the best argument for why we need to consider that as part of our process here.
Well, every day when I open up a case and I'm working on a case, my focus is on being an advocate for whoever my client is. When you do that, you analyze, here's what I need to prove. You go through the case law, you make sure you know what you have to prove. You think, here's the evidence that I need to get there. And then when you're in trial, you are very focused on, here is the record I have to make, so that when I get a good result for my client, I get to keep it and tell them that no one can appeal and take this away. The appellate court, as Justice knows, looks at all of those things from 10,000 feet up, and they've been strict about that you actually do have to prove your case, and you have to do it the right way with the right evidence at the right time. And that's what, it helps to have someone who's down in the trenches. If you're gonna write a book about how to perform a certain surgery, and you only have the professors up here that are teaching the class, and you never ask a surgeon to come in and be a part of that group, you're missing the point. And so you really have to have a wide variety on your appellate court of people who have been at different levels, judges, different parts of the law practice, and people that are the practitioner, the people that do the day-to-day work. Yeah.
Ms. Law?
No questions.
Mr. Bevel?
Ms. Greer, those of us who've had cases with you
know how competitive you are. And you also seem to have fun competing. And you seem to enjoy what you
That's
do.
because I want to make Henry laugh. Because of that beautiful laugh he has.
But, so my question for you is, why do you want to referee? You're having a great time. Why?
Well, I think, Henry, look at this way. I've been doing this for a while. I've had a lot of fun. I've enjoyed what I've done. But I have other skills too. And part of that skill set, I think, would fit and would motivate me and kind of charge me up to provide a service to Iowans. And I've thought about, would I want to teach or would I want to be a judge? I've applied before. I really think that being a judge would be a way to serve. And if you look at my background, I've not just been a lawyer, I've served a lot of organizations, and so it fits into kind of a goal that I've had.
Thank you.
Mr. Sukup?
Thank you. Well, I believe it was, 2013 you applied last time for the appeals court?
Yes.
So, enjoyed that visit. So, a little bit like with Henry, what's changed since then for the renewed interest in the court?
I think it's always been an interest. I could not apply for the Supreme Court because of the term, and I am eligible for this court, and so I'm back.
Thank you.
Ms. Sinclair?
Have you ever applied for the district court? And if not, why not?
I have not. And the reason I have not is because that's the level I'm operating at, and I have always thought, I feel like I have a talent in writing, and I have always thought that it would be a way, or it would be very fun to have the case and write the decision in terms of being able to do that on a daily basis. And I think that's probably why. I interact with clients all the time, so this would be a very different kind of role as opposed to what I'm doing right now.
Ms. Diekma?
There's a joke behind that. I know you to have been very active in your community, in the legal world, all those types of things. The Supreme Court, our Iowa Supreme Court, has been very active in the last few years, getting out there, talking to Iowans. We've not seen so much of that from the Court of Appeals. Would you just address whether or not you think that'd be a good idea to add the Court of Appeals to the travel? They're doing some of that now, but the policy, those types of things. And how would you interplay with that?
Well, I do think that the Court of Appeals is doing a good job of getting out in terms of having their sessions in different cities, and I think that should continue. But I also believe that just knowing my background and how I'm involved with people generally, and I don't think that you have to join the Court of Appeals and become a hermit. I don't think that they are, but I think you shouldn't do that. I could see more interaction from my standpoint with high schools, girl groups. My daughter just sent me a class that she thought was fascinating. It was Camp Girl Construction or something like that. It was a construction class. I mean, I think that it is very essential that the public know the role of this court, the appellate court, and have that connection with judges. And I think that it helps to get out to talk to government classes, help them understand the process and the system, and that's something that I would be advocating greatly.
Thank you.
Mr. Goodman?
We've known each other for a long time. I was a city kid in Marshalltown, and you lived outside of town, and you've had a very distinguished career over 37 years. I also noticed that you practiced in Spencer, Iowa, and now practice in Marshalltown, and have been there for 33 years. You also occupy a leadership position with the Iowa Academy of Trial Lawyers, which is one of the most distinguished groups of practitioners in Iowa. And in addition to that, we're one of the 3 nominees in 2013 with Judge McDonald and now Judge Jeannie Vaught. I'd like to know what does that experience combine? do you think bring to the court? And I'd also like to add this in. You have 31 jury trials listed, and I'd like to know what the total number is, because that's within a 10-year period. So tell me that part of your experience, and then what that brings to the Court of Appeals that you think distinguishes you from the other applicants.
Well, I have over 100 jury trials. I mean, it's probably more like 150 now in my experience. And what might distinguish me in my career from other candidates would be that experience, that being able to have that many trials in that many areas that a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to do. And I do think that when you interact with groups, like volunteer groups as well, and you grow up in a town of 700 people where you have interrelated with people that have very few assets or very few opportunities, and you connect with them and they're your best friend and you go over to their house. And I have experiences with all levels of people. And I joked with, maybe it was with you, Mr. Bloom, about why is my psychology degree so important? I find that I have, and Henry might laugh about this, but I have a very easy sense of knowing what motivates people and how they operate just by interconnecting with all sorts of people. And I think that's a real strength that I have going back to my life as a farm kid, living in a little town in Spencer and then in Marshalltown, and then also just being involved with all sorts of different types of situations in the law.
Thank you.
Mr. Bloom?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank
Ms.
you.
Conover?
Just to follow up on Mr. Goodman's point, your record of trial work is quite possibly unparalleled in the state of Iowa. My question for you is, you're bucking the trend of the disappearing jury trial. Are jury trials still important? And if so, why?
Oh, very much so. When you're dealing with a jury and you actually watch them go through the process of solving a problem that as lawyers we can't solve because we're at loggerheads about what the result should be, how fascinating is that to know that everyday citizens get a voice in the system? I mean, I think it's important. Plus, if you are working on solutions for people and you don't know what a jury will do, how do you get to the solution if you don't have this body of jury trials to tell us what do Iowans want to do with these cases? So I think it's extremely important. I do.
Mrs. Roberts?
No questions.
Ms. O'Brien?
Just real briefly, can you give us some insight about why you have this amazing trial record when none of the rest of us can seem to get to trial anymore?
Oh, man. I don't know. I think I'm kind of, I would tell you it might possibly be the fact that when I get a call about a new case, I often get this, they start with, well, this is a doozy, or this is very interesting. We don't know quite what to do with it. So a lot of my trials are very interesting things where perhaps a jury does need to tell us what the result should be, or I think that oftentimes it might be the type of case that gets me to the trial. Mm-hmm.
Mr. Herba?
Yes, Justice. Good morning. Good afternoon. Whatever. You had quite a few references that were on the non-law side, organizations, stuff like that, and I checked with some of those references, and they said that you have a unique ability to ask questions no one thought about, and also the questions that everybody was too uncomfortable to ask. How does that trait become an asset for the Court of Appeals?
Well, Tom Henderson said to me one time, well, Sharon, tell us how you really feel. Because I think I got that from my dad. actually, is my dad was so skilled at making everybody feel like he cared, but also helping them understand that, you know, maybe this was the way, or here are some of the things we really need to think about, so that people weren't really upset ever. I mean, I think he was able to do that in a very skilled way, and I watched him do that through the Iowa Pork Producers and National Pork Producers as a senator and as a county supervisor, and so he probably instilled that a little bit in me, and I like the fact that people know that when I come into a situation that they can trust how I feel. I'm genuine about how I feel, and I'm a listener, and I think the greatest skill that a lawyer can have is to be a listener, and how odd to say that, because that's not probably the public perception, but it was something I learned very early on. And I just finished a trial, very difficult situation, death case. The lawyer on the other side and I are great friends. We settled in the middle of the trial, and the plaintiff's mother, who had lost her son, came up to me and said, because I said to her, I'm very sorry about all of this. She said, I could tell from the very beginning of this case, even though we were opposite each other, that you cared about me. And it's just something I think, why hide how you are or how you feel? It's just never been a part of my DNA.
Mr. Gray, we're coming to lunchtime, but if you have a question, go ahead.
I think I'd only be showing off, so I think I'll shut up.
Thank you very much, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.